On today's episode, Bilt leads us to coin a new term. We'll talk about why you might not want to throw out that United credit card mailer, especially if you're interested in elite status. And Calala Island wants to pay you to book with points.
Frequent Miler on the Air starts now. Today's main event, Private Island Ultra All-Inclusive Barefoot Luxury with a $2,500 rebate. Calala Island is a resort hotel property that's part of the Small Luxury Hotels of the World collection, which is bookable through Hilton. And you can book it with Hilton points or with Hilton free night certificates. And they are out with a deal where if you book at least a 4-night stay, even with points, you can get a actually $2,510 back for your stay. It seems like an unbelievable deal. We're going to get into that in today's main event.
And if you'd like to jump ahead to that or you want to come back to something later on, you can always find the timestamps in the show notes. Just expand the description box and you'll find links to all the topics that we talk about today. And wherever you're watching or listening, don't forget to like this, give us a thumbs up. We always appreciate that. Let's drag out this week's giant mailbag.
Today's giant mail comes from Vijay, who says, in your episode on using year-end credits, I'm not sure whether you covered Bank of America's Premium Rewards Card's $100 airline incidental credit. I recently utilized the credit just by rebooking my Alaska flight. I wanted to utilize my Amex offer on Alaska Airlines. It was $60 back on $300 or more purchase with Alaska Airlines they had. However, the day I wanted to travel was around $380, but it costs around $310 if I travel 2 days later. So I booked the Alaska flight for $310 with my American Express card. Then I rescheduled the flight to the day I wanted to fly and paid the difference with my Premium Rewards card. So basically, they paid about $70 on their Premium Rewards card to change to the day they actually wanted to fly. That triggered my incidental credit. At the end, I got $60 rebate from Amex and $70 credit from Bank of America. I would have never thought about trying this trick if I hadn't listened to your podcasts.
Smart. Well done. Very good, Vijay. I like that move. So, yeah, I don't know if we talked about the Bank of America Premium Rewards airline incidental credit. It's one that's relatively easy to use because a lot of stuff is automatic like that. So, it's a good one to point out. Though I think now I'm going to say this wrong. I think it's a card member year benefit and not a calendar year benefit, if I remember correctly. I got burned by that at some point where I assumed that I was eligible for it, but then found out I wasn't because I had used it within the card member year, even though it wasn't the same calendar year. So you do have to check the terms on that. But otherwise, this is a great technique. This is one I was just recently looking for an opportunity to do something like this with a different card where I said, oh, well, in fact, it was a frequent miler thing where frequent miler was going to reimburse my flight for something, but I thought, well, I kind of like to fly first class, and can I later on change to the flight I want and use one of my cards with an airline incidental credit in order to upgrade? And so this is a technique that certainly I think about when I'm booking things like that. So I think that's great that you did it. Well done.
Yeah. And, we have a post about American Express airline fee reimbursements and what works to trigger those, because it's not only the things that are advertised to work that work. And doing things like this with an Amex card often will trigger those reimbursements for like Amex Platinum cards, for example. However, if you want to get ideas for how to trigger things like this with other cards, the types of things that work for Amex cards tend to also work for cards like the Bank of America card. But it's actually easier because Bank of America works with any airline fees, not just the one that you pick as your primary, as Amex requires.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely worth checking out that post though, because it does vary from one airline to another in terms of what works and how much, perhaps, because the size of the charge might make a difference. There's a lot of little variables. So check that post. If you see something in there listed that works, if it's under the what works sections, that means that we have not gotten a data point saying that it doesn't work, and you can be almost guaranteed that anything that stops working, someone will let us know when it does. So if you see that it works, it probably does, even if the data point is a little bit older. I always advise people that if it says it works, it probably does. All right. So that clears up that. And so let's move on to this week's card news. So in card news, we've got a fast track to United Silver status with some targeted new card offers. How's that work?
Yeah, people have been getting mailers for signing up for a new United credit card. And the offers look pretty typical. Like, for example, you get up to 80,000 miles, you get 70,000 after spending $3,000 in 3 months, and then another 10,000 for adding an authorized user. Very typical airline credit card offer. But it adds a little twist, which is that you can get Premier Silver status after you complete 4 flight segments on United or United Express in 2026. And cool thing is award flights count. So
Wow.
it's, if you fly United just even a moderate amount and you could use silver status, that's a nice little extra on top of the points for that type of card.
Yeah, and silver status will get you a free checked bag, although your credit card will probably get you that too. So the
Yeah.
nice thing though about silver status is you'd get it even if you didn't pay for your flight with your card, whereas United requires is one of the few out there that does require you pay for your flight with the card in order to get the free checked bag. So having United silver status would be valuable if you want to be able to pay for your flights with some other card. And of course, you get I don't know, a chance for some upgrades and preferred
Right.
seating or all that type of stuff as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it's not a lot of benefits above what the card probably gives you automatically, but there are definitely some, and so that would be nice to have, and especially if for those of us who used to get United Silver status from having Marriott Titanium status, if you've given up Titanium status, then you could be looking forward to other ways to get to get United Silver.
Yep. All right. Mattress running the numbers. Marriott, speaking of Marriott Titanium status, Marriott is out with a promotion to earn 2,500 bonus points per stay plus one bonus elite night per brand. So this is sort of like a brand explorer, I guess, like what Hyatt offers for a brand explorer, except it's a bonus elite night credit for each individual brand, each separate brand you stay at during the promotion period, right?
That's right. That's right. So you need to register by April 26th, and you need to complete your stay by May 10th, and no earlier than February 25th, actually. And this one, it's only paid stays, so they're not giving you anything for award stays. So at a high level, if you look at this 2,500 bonus points per stay, it's not per day. So you're talking about no matter how long the stay is, you're getting only 2,500 bonus points. Our reasonable redemption value for Marriott is 0.76 cents per point, which means you're getting about $19 of value from your entire stay, extra beyond what points you would normally earn. So, I mean, we can right off the bat say it's not worth Mattress running this deal for the points. But what about for the bonus elite nights? Would it be worth doing one night stays? So each one night stay then you would earn 2 elite nights towards elite status, 2 qualifying nights towards elite status, as long as you mix up every time which brand you're staying at.
Yeah, I mean, would it be worth it? It depends on, I guess, how much you value those elite nights. You'd have to kind of put a price tag on that. I think if you were able to find a property that's very inexpensive, I don't know, $60 or $70 a night, and you're able to get this $19-ish back in points plus whatever you would ordinarily earn on the stay. I don't know off the top of my head the value of what you'd earn off the stay, but let's say it's another $10, so $30 worth of points back. So maybe your net cost you could look at as being something like $40. I say something like because points aren't exactly like cash, but maybe you click through a shopping portal, so you earn a little something back by clicking through a shopping
Mhm.
portal when you make your booking. So, I mean, if you were paying a sort of a net 40-ish dollars for two elite night credits, I mean, $20 a night that for elite night credits, maybe not so bad. I wouldn't mattress run all the way to platinum or titanium status for that. But if I feel like I'm going to be a little short of a particular threshold, then I might be willing to do a few. I always caution people though about mattress running this early in the year because you don't know what's going to happen the rest of the year. And so, if you end up going way over what you needed for status later on because something comes up, you end up needing some extra hotel stays, you have to travel for work and you didn't realize you were going to have to, etc. Then it becomes money that you've just kind of flushed if you didn't actually end up needing the elite nights. So I think it could potentially be okay, but I'd caution most people probably shouldn't be mattress running this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. There are so many shortcuts to Marriott Elite status as well that, like, I was going to say something like, well, if you have a stay at a, expensive property coming up, you're going to be at the St. Regis Bora Bora or something, and so you want Marriott Platinum status in time, so you get free breakfast and everything. Then maybe it makes sense, but you know what? If you have the ability to pick up a Bonvoy Brilliant card, you get platinum status automatically with that, and that'd be much
Yeah.
easier than going around mattress running. So I don't think there's a lot of. I'm sure there are edge case situations where it makes sense to do, but I think for most people, it just doesn't make sense to go out of your way to do this.
Yeah, I think actually, to be honest, it would more so potentially be appealing for somebody looking to fill the gap between 50 and 75 nights. For somebody who really wants titanium status. And at 75 nights, you get the ability to select a 40K free night certificate, and you get United Silver and what Air Canada, something like United
Air
Silver.
Canada
And so,
25K status, I think it's
yeah.
called.
So if you know you're going to hit 50, or you're pretty confident you're going to hit 50 and doing, five or 10 cheap brands, and that's convenient for you and all the rest of that, I don't know, maybe it could be worth putting some money. But yeah, very edge
Edge.
case, I
That's what
think.
I'm saying. Yeah, edge cases. Um,
Very edge
you'll
case.
if you're interested in this, then what I really recommend, make sure to read our post about shortcuts to Marriott Elite status. We'll have a link to it
Yeah.
in the show notes because, as I said, there are lots of ways to get to where you want to be. And mattress running is just one of many ways, and so it may or may not make sense for you.
All right. Next up, let's talk about being Bonvoyed by Bilt.
So Bilt's 2.0 rollout just continues to underwhelm, or I guess overwhelm.
Right. Right. But not
We're
in the
all
way that one would hope.
That's right. We are all overwhelmed by how many problems have occurred with the rollout, and so we've posted about some more. So we've posted about problems in the past, but now, yeah, we have things happening like Bilt is denying mortgage payments that people are trying to make through the card. That's supposed to be like the one of the top billed features of these cards is ability to do that. They are overall, new account holders are finding that charges they try to make with their credit card are getting denied, and in some cases their accounts are subsequently being frozen. People who signed up through the points guy had a offer for an extra 5 points per dollar on top of the regular welcome bonus for the Palladium card, and people who signed up through that link while it was still active, not everybody's getting that offer attached to their account, and most people are getting nowhere by going through TPG's support. And even worse, some responses back have been basically like saying, well, there's been so much basically fraud, people trying to claim that they signed up under that offer that we're not going to approve it for anyone who complains about it, which is
Unbelievable.
a problem because we know real people who really click through that link that are not getting the 5x, and that's just the worst policy I can imagine for that. So all of this is just a big mess.
Yeah, some of the email exchanges that have been shared with me by people that, are longtime readers or longtime Points and Miles folks, it's just made me shake my head as to what the thought process is behind how to respond to those. Because they're folks that I know aren't trying to game the system, but
Hmm.
boy, they're just being treated that way. Talk about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the response and crazy stuff like denying mortgage payments. We've seen some posts now from people who have their mortgage through Bilt's mortgage partner, that United Mortgage Service, whatever, UWM or whatever it might be. The people that have their mortgage through that had their payment declined as a non-housing payment, it's going to their mortgage partner. Come on now. It's mind blowing that there are those types of problems, because some of those things are things that one would think could have been easily anticipated. And so, like the charges being denied and accounts being frozen, and that all happening on a Saturday and a Sunday because the card got launched on a Saturday. Like, you had to know that a lot of people were going to start using their card on the first day that you promised a seamless transition, right? So you'd think that you'd have the systems in place to be able to handle that and take care of clearing fraud alerts and stuff like that. And just didn't seem that way. And again, with the TPG offer not attaching properly for people, and not having, again, a clear mechanism to get that figured out, and more importantly, a clear tracking system so that it would just work automatically like it does with almost every credit card on the market. That's mind blowing to me. So
Yeah.
it's unfortunate now. And I mean, in my household, my wife's Palladium card worked on day one, only used it one time the first day, and but then we went to use the $10 in Bilt cash for a $10 Walgreens gift card, and it seemed like it worked. It looked like it generated, says, hey, congratulations, and it has like the asterisks where the card number would be, and you can click a button to reveal the card number, and when you click that button, it reveals the card number. Card number is none.
Be careful what you reveal on the show, Nick. People might go out and spend your $10.
Right. Right. Believe it or not, Walgreens didn't know how to redeem a gift card with no gift card number, Bilt. Yeah. Anyway, so and stuff
Mm,
like that is stuff that you'd think would be tested and ready to rock and roll. So it's
yeah.
disappointing that all of that has happened, because it's a card that I do, we talked last week. It could be a good fit for some folks, but man, if you're in that crowd, you probably haven't been too impressed with all of those things that and I don't want to hear Bilt refer to it as noise, because it's not noise.
Oh
It's
no.
pretty real.
This is
So,
real. It's real, very problematic stuff happening. I think we both came to the conclusion. So, Bill 2.0 lets you explicitly allows you to pay rent or mortgage for other people. And my original plan when this stuff was first announced was to pay rent for some other family members. But I think we discussed maybe last week that, as things stand right now, that's not something. It's certainly not something I'm going to do. I think, Nick, right? You said you weren't going to
right.
do,
No.
because of all the problems with the rollout. We wouldn't trust Bilt with these rent payments at this time, and what's happening with the mortgage payments makes that look so absolutely the right answer. It's really awful. So we've been calling this segment Bonvoyed for years now, because Marriott introduced the term Bonvoy years ago, and they subsequently went on to make lots of very customer unfriendly changes to their rewards program. And so Bonvoyed became, a description for when programs do that. And someone on our team, I don't know if it was you, Nick, someone talked about
I think
this.
it
It
was.
was you. Talked about what's happening now as being Biltvoyed. And my thought about that is that there's a slight difference here. So
Okay.
Bonvoyed, I think, is when programs deliberately make customer unfriendly changes. All this Bilt stuff, or most of it, is not deliberate changes to what they're promising. It's just incompetent rollout of all this stuff, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think there's a difference between being Bonvoyed and Biltvoyed, and a lot of us are being heavily Biltvoyed these days.
Heavily built void. Heavily built
Yeah.
void. I did coin the term. I did not come up with the distinction there, but I think that that is a perfect distinction. So, yes,
Yeah.
errors due to incompetence
Right, right.
definitely is being
And
built void.
and like you could go back to like things that happened last year with other programs like Citi Biltvoyed a bunch of people initially with a Strata Elite rollout when they locked their accounts, right?
Right.
Now they made up for
They just didn't
that.
know it. They were very forward thinking with that move,
They
City.
they were
Well
they
done.
didn't even know what they were doing, but they were Biltvoying before it was popular,
Well, they
and
didn't know what they were doing, which is what they were doing, is they were built voiding people.
right, right. But then take like when Chase suddenly decided that the edit no longer would automatically get 2 cents per point redemption value. Like sometimes you will,
Hmm.
but sometimes you won't. A- And then they pretended that that was always their plan all along. That's Bonvoyed because that's an
Yes.
intentional program devaluation. It's
Right.
not incompetence except decision making incompetence, I guess, but not in the
Right.
rollout of the change.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
And
there we go.
yeah, so there you have it. There you have it. In terms of like paying rent and mortgage, that's something that maybe I'll consider down the road once this all gets smoothed out because I have
Hmm.
to imagine they'll smooth it out. I'm really disappointed that that wasn't all worked out ahead of time and ready to rock and roll. I
Totally.
imagine eventually, hopefully it'll but even when I do, I would make sure that anything that needs to get paid is paid well in advance of whatever the deadline is. And that's my practice in general. We've talked on a recent episode, I think it was 343, where we talked about ways we increase spend. And one of the things I said I do is I pay a car payment for a family member. And I schedule that car payment to deliver weeks before it's due because if anything ever goes wrong with it, I want to know well ahead. So I get the email that the payment has gone through and I take a screenshot of it when it has, and I have a reminder set up. So if I haven't received that email, I'll know. So I think that's good practice in general with stuff like this. But yeah, I'm gonna hold off on anything like that until they smooth out my Walgreens gift card because if that's a problem, then I'm not ready to jump into anything else. All right, let's talk about awards, points, and more. And awards, points, and more. This week, I wrote about my EU 261 compensation claim with Finnair. So we talked on the show a while back how in December we had a delayed Finnair flight that led to a missed connection, and so had to overnight in Helsinki and take a flight the next day. And under EU 261 regulations, that meant that we were due some compensation, or at least I assumed so. Finnair had provided a free hotel and meals and all the stuff that they would be required to under EU 261. They proactively made that part really easy, and I've talked about that before. I was impressed with how simple that was. But then, as per my read of the terms of EU 261 and the notification I got from the TripIt app identifying this, I thought that we were due 400 euros a passenger, 400 euros per person, so 1,600 euros for four people in this case in compensation. Now, I had booked my Finnair flights, the Finnair flights here via Alaska Atmos for 7,500 miles and $5.60 each way. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you booked it because it was within the EU in this case. There are other situations where it'll apply if you're departing the EU, et cetera, et cetera. But in this case, it was 400 euros a person for the distance, and it was super easy to do. It was possible to do it all online. I didn't have to call anybody. I didn't have to have any screenshots. I didn't have to upload any documentation apart from they did require a power of attorney form if you were going to file on behalf of the other passengers on the PNR, the other people on the same record locator, which was easy. They provided a link to the form to download it and print it, and you just needed to fill in name, date of birth, sign it, kind of a thing, authorizing the primary passenger to
Hmm.
file the claim and receive the compensation. So it was very easy to do. It took me, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to file the claim, if that. And then the way they handle it, Finnair handles it in a way that probably a number of airlines do. They would rather not give you the money, and so they
Sure.
first give you give you the option to accept an airline credit, but they know you're not going to take 1,600 euros in airline credit. In this case, that's what we were due, 1,600 euros. They knew we wouldn't take 1,600 euros in airline credit over 1,600 euros in the bank. So they offer 50% more in the airline credit. So they offered 2,400 euros in gift card credit. Now, the way Finnair does it is you have to take it in gift card form initially. So we received a gift card for 2,400 euros for Finnair. And then within the email that provides the gift card, they provide a link to convert that to cash. So if you'd rather have cash, you can get your cash. But of course, you're only going to get in this case, the 1,600 that I was due, 400 euros a passenger. So if you convert to cash, you're going to take the lesser amount, which was fine with us. That's more than $1,900 at the current exchange rate for four passengers. So that was plenty to cover our costs and needs for that situation. So again, very impressed with how easy it was. Took about 10 minutes to file the claim, took about 2 weeks to receive a response. And first response was, we're sorry, we're going to pay the claim out. And you'll get a separate email with the gift card in a few days. A few days later, sure enough, received the email with the gift cards. I was patient at each step along the way. I didn't follow up with a million messages asking, what's the status of the claim? How come nobody's responded? But when am I going to get my gift card? I just left it all to see what would happen naturally.
Yeah.
And so not doing anything meant no stress for me and it all just happened. So
Yeah,
if you
that's
run into
great.
that situation with Finnair, it was pretty easy to handle.
Yeah, so that's so good when those kind of things work out, and especially if it's easy, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So good to know, and so something to keep in mind when you're traveling around Europe or from Europe, and something goes wrong. Make sure see if you're entitled to some money.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have a Instacart deal. United has teamed up with Instacart, and they're offering up to the ability to earn up to 10,500 miles if you're new to Instacart. So you could earn 500 bonus miles just by linking your Instacart account to your United Mileage Plus account and placing your first qualifying Instacart order within 60 days of doing that. You will also earn 5,000 bonus miles after completing 4 qualifying Instacart orders within 8 weeks of linking your account. So those two seem pretty darn easy. 5,500 bonus miles right there with just for being a new Instacart user. Next part, though, earn 5,000 bonus miles when subscribing to an annual Instacart Plus membership. So if you're interested in paying for an Instacart membership, then that's good. But there have been many deals lately for getting kind of 3 months at a time of free Instacart Plus membership just by linking various Chase cards, for example, and they stack together to extend your Instacart Plus membership. So personally, if I was looking at this, I wouldn't go for that part of the deal. You also get $0 delivery fees for 7 days before a qualifying United domestic flight and up to 14 days afterwards. So you get sort of a discount there by not having to pay delivery fees for a little while.
Yeah, I mean that's actually kind of cool. I like that. That's a smart way to kind of tie it in with the brand. I think it's a unique idea that I haven't seen elsewhere, and I'd love to see some other of the Chase co-brands think of something like that. It'd be nice to see that. Anyway, yeah, I think so. The thing for me with Instacart is I had mostly ignored the Instacart stuff for a long time because we don't have a grocery store like in my town. There's some grocery stores 30 miles away, but then I got to plan in advance, and my thought about it for a long time was like, for $10, it wasn't necessarily worth it. Now I say $10 because most Chase co-branded cards, or I think all the co-branded cards, offer a $10 monthly credit for Instacart purchases. It's not even a credit, it's a discount. So it's like a coupon that comes off of the total. And you can link multiple Chase co-branded cards. So like we've got our Southwest cards and our Ritz card and our IHG card and all the rest of that in one Instacart account. Both my wife's and mine, they don't let you do more than one of the same card type in an individual account, but you could do a bunch of different cards. So we got a whole bunch of them, and ink cards also. The no fee ink cards get some credits. So I finally started saying, you know what, this is too much money to pass up. I'm getting all these credits each month, and it's not quite free, but it works out to be a decent discount on my groceries. So I finally did that. And so if you're in that boat like me, where you were like, I don't know about Instacart, but you have a United card, it might be worth checking this out because you get 3 months of free Instacart Plus anyway, by virtue of having your United card and linking that up through the promotion. We have links in our post about that. You'll get $10 off your first order each month when you're using that card. and pretty easy to hit the minimums here. You need 4 qualifying orders within 8 weeks. So, I mean, you're going to get a $10 coupon in the first month and a $10 coupon in the second month. So, I think it'd be pretty easy to only have to pay for one or two. And if
Mhm.
you've got multiple um, qualifying chase cards, then it might not cost you very much at all to earn 5,500 miles here. I wouldn't
Yeah.
bother, like Greg
Yeah.
said, with the annual thing, but
We,
otherwise, this is pretty
right.
easy.
To be clear, though, we do think that you'd have to do it in the right order of like sign up for this promotion first as a new
Hmm.
Instacart user,
Yes.
then add your other Chase cards to extend your Instacart Plus
Good point.
membership and to get additional coupons. I think that would be required to make all of that stack.
Good
Um,
point.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. But an easy 5,500 miles to stack on top. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines on that and you're ready to
Yeah.
hop in an Instacart, might as well pick up your 5,500 miles along the way.
Hmm.
All right. We'll be right back with our main event, the Calala Island $2,500 deal after this.
And we're back, and it's main event time. Private Island Ultra all inclusive barefoot luxury with a $2,500 rebate. Calala Island. It's a private island that only has 6 villas. It's all inclusive. They advertise themselves as offering barefoot luxury, and also describe their offerings as ultra all inclusive. I think because it's more than just food and drink that's included. It's also various activities and things. And they are available to book through Hilton, and you could use points or free night certificates, and we'll go into that some more in a moment. But the reason this made our main event is because they are celebrating their 10-year anniversary with a big promotion. They are offering guests who book before May 10th 2,500, actually $2,510. I don't know why they
Very
tacked on an
specific.
extra
Very
$10
specific.
there. $2,510 for booking, for staying 4 nights or more. And the rule is that you have to book before May 10th. You have to stay by June 10th, 2027. So you've got well over a year for your stay from now. And amazing thing is that award stays count. So you can book through Hilton, book with points or whatever, and you should be eligible for that rebate. Cash rates, though, start at around $4,500 a night. So if you're looking at this like, wow, what a great rebate off a cash stay, not really, because four night stay is gonna cost you $18,000, and so the $2,500 is not going to seem very significant in light of
That's
that.
a little more than 10%, I guess. But yeah, right. Right. Not my
Um,
style to spend $18,000 on 4 nights. Let's put it that
yeah.
way.
But Nick, tell us about Hilton award prices and how, even if you want to pay with cash, you could do much better than $18,000.
Yeah, so this property goes for 240,000 points per night for a standard room. Now, I say that, and of course, Hilton is dynamic, so that could change. It could be more or less when you listen to this. I don't know if and when it'll change at all. But at the time we're recording this anyway, 240,000 points per night, or you can use free night certificates. I'll come back to that in a second. If you're using points, then a 4 night stay or a 5 night stay, either way, would cost you 960,000 points. The reason I say either way is because if you have Hilton Silver status or better, which is pretty easy to get from lots of different avenues, then you get the 5th night free on award stays. So you'd be able to pay for 4 nights and stay for 5. So 960,000 Hilton points is a pretty good deal there because you can often, including now as we record this, buy Hilton points for half a cent per point. So 960,000 points would cost you about $4,800, or in fact, $4,800 even. Now, I don't know if you can buy that many in a single account, but Hilton allows you to pool with up to 10 people. So you could have a few people in your family each buy whatever the max is in order to come up with the 960,000 points you need. So it costs you $4,800 to buy the 960,000 points. So if you were to do that, if you were to buy all the points you need for this day, you don't have any Hilton points to start, you'd spend $4,800 on points. You'd get a $2,500 rebate, 2510 as Greg notes. So you're going to pay about $2,300 for potentially 5 nights. So it's about $460 a night. That's really cheap compared to the cash rate of $4,500 a night.
Yeah, and it's really cheap too for an all-inclusive luxury, property that's on a private island with only six, individual bungalows kind of thing. So, from that point of view, it sounds like an amazing deal. For those wondering, if you might have free night certificates, but maybe not enough to do the full 4 nights. So maybe you want to do a combination of free nights and points. You do want to get it all on one booking, which you can't do online with your free nights. But what you can do is either call Hilton or online chat with them and tell them you want to book, these 4 nights and apply, let's say, 2 of your free night certificates and apply points to the rest of it. And that'll all be booked as a single stay and will qualify for this.
Yeah. Now, be aware that if you do that, if you mix free night certificates and points, you won't qualify for the 5th night free based on your free night certificates anyway. So if you were to try to book, say, 5 nights and pay for, 2 with points and 2 with free night certificates and get the 5th night free, it doesn't work like that. To get the 5th night free, you need to pay for 5 nights with points entirely. Now you could do 5 nights with points and 2 nights on free night certificates, and you'd pay for 4 nights worth of points plus your 2 free night certificates, but they can't be part of the 5th night free. And that's universal. That's true with all the various programs that offer something like that. So you can't mix in the free night certificates for that type of thing. And the free night deals have to be paid for with points.
Right. Another limitation, does it still exist that Hilton requires like silver status or better to do 5th night free?
Yeah, I thought so. I mentioned that before.
Okay.
As far as
All
I
right,
know,
missed
it
that.
does. So
Yeah.
so you'll need Hilton Silver status, which is relatively easy. I mean, if you've got a platinum card, you've got Hilton Gold status, or you can anyway. You need to activate it, but that'd give you Hilton Gold status. The Hilton Surpass card gives Hilton Gold status, and Hilton Silver status itself only requires, I don't know, not that many nights. So it's not terribly difficult to get. Hilton often does status matching, so plenty of easy ways to get a level of status with Hilton that you would need. And in fact, silver status might even be a benefit of another Hilton card. I can't recall off the top of my head whether the no fee card comes with it or not, but it might. At any rate, it's pretty easy to get that deal. So sounds pretty good, right? I mean, if you were just buying the points, $4,800 to buy the points, you get $2,500 back, pay $23 out of pocket. So $460 a night, which Greg made the great point that for such an exclusive sort of luxury, all-inclusive type of experience is a pretty good deal. And that's not even mentioning all of the stuff that's included, which we'll come back to in a little bit, because like Greg said, it's not just like food and drink that's included. There's also some epic transfer that is
that's right. Transfers are included. Yeah, I mean, at a high level, this looks too good to be true, right? You're talking about you can book this $4,500 per night property for less than $500, even if per night, even if you don't. Even if you don't have any Hilton points to begin with, you could get them by buying them during a sale and then book it so at the high level, that's what it looks like. Of course, the devil's in the details, and I want to mention 2 huge buts here. Like, but wait, there's this. The first big but is that there's a 90-day lock-in period. What I mean by that is you get free cancellations on these bookings until 90 days before the stay. And then what they do is they charge you up until 29 days before the stay. They'll charge you 50% of the total stay if you cancel. And I believe that's going to be based on the cash rate, not the points rate, is my understanding. And then if it's within 28 days of the stay, they'll charge 100%. And so, I mean, you don't want to be paying $18,000. Or if it's a 5-night stay, I guess it would be 22. Anyway, and that's
even if it is just the points, even if it is just because I remember when the Montana ranch place came out, there was a 20% cancellation penalty, and they did charge that in the form of points. They took 20% of points away from people. So it may actually be the points here, but even if it is, still your point stands. You don't want to lose 960,000 points on this, or even half of that, right?
Right. So if you're going to do this, make sure you're committed. And if you're sure you're committed, make sure you've read or watched videos or listened to people talk about how you get to and from the island.
Because that's the other big but, right? I mean,
That's the other big but. Um,
it's an adventure.
that's what we've been told. It's an adventure. So the at a high level, you need to fly to Managua and overnight there so that you can take a very early morning domestic flight, then a car ride, and then a 2 hour riverboat. With in between within the 2 hours is a government security checkpoint. It's an adventure, and I wanted to read 1 Mile at a Time's view of this. Ben at 1 Mile at a Time wrote about how he and his husband did this trip, and his husband Ford said, "This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever voluntarily put myself through." And then Ben goes on to say, you spend the first hour going through, and now he's talking about the boat ride itself, the 2 hour boat ride. You spend the first hour going through mangroves and lagoons, which sounds nice, except you're going really fast to the point that your eyes are watering and you can barely look outside, even with sunglasses. I spent most of the boat ride just looking down. The boat just constantly hits the water over and over and over. It's physically painful. Make sure you put on lots of sunscreen since there's no shade. Similarly, if it rains, you're exposed to all the elements, and weather in this region changes very quickly. Your bags are put into plastic bags and trash bags so they don't get wet, and you're given a poncho. And then, so that's just the start. That's the first half of the boat ride. The boat is, by the way, it's just like an open, metal, like
Yeah.
boat with a
Imagine a canoe with a motor.
or a
It's
rowboat. It looks kind of like a rowboat.
rowboat. There you go. Rowboat. Yes. Row your boat, but with a motor.
Yeah, yeah. Then he says, when you get out of the mangroves area, you arrive at a military checkpoint where armed military officers check your boat very carefully to make sure you're not bringing anything you shouldn't be. I guess this is the coastal entry point to Nicaragua, which is why this is there. That took about 15 minutes. And then you go into the open sea. OMFG. I'm not going to say what that stands for.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Here's the thing, and I'm still quoting Ben. A rough boat ride is kind of fun for like 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes tops, but you spend the first 60 minutes of the ride with the boat constantly hitting the water every couple seconds, and then the last 45 minutes or so is spent just rocking back and forth to the point that you wonder if you're going to make it. When we were on the open sea, Ford started asking me already about what the other options were for leaving Calala Island, as he was seasick and had terrible back pain. We asked Shorvin, who was the guy escorting them, if the roughness was normal, and he said it was, noting it was actually a fairly calm day.
Yeah. So, if you haven't been on a small boat like that on an open ocean before, let me tell you that you got to be ready for that. Some people are good with that, and I'm not in that category of people. We were in Montenegro actually over the summer last year, and we took a boat tour to the Blue Lagoon, which is like one of the things if you look up on, I don't know, whatever list of things there are to do, that's the kind of the thing there in Kotor. Big mistake. Big mistake for us because you're in the bay and it's exactly like Ben describes this. You're in the bay, just bam, 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 bam for the first however long it was. And then you hit the open ocean and you were thinking in the bay that it was kind of rough. And then you hit the open ocean and it was just a whole new ball game. And so, yeah, that was not my idea of a good time. However, like I read that and I got a good laugh and I was like, okay, this is not the thing for me. But not everybody has that perspective. In fact, there are many people out there who think that it's kind of part of the fun, right?
Right. I think it's worth reading what Derrick Dye at Travel on Points had to say about his experience arriving at the island. Do you want to read this part?
Yeah. So Derrick says the beauty of this ultra all-inclusive property is that once your free cancellation window closes at 90 days prior to the stay, Calala Island's team jumps in and plans, pays for, and supervises all aspects of your Nicaraguan transportation. All transfers, including the boat rides and inter-Nicaraguan airplane tickets, are included. Approximately 30 days before our stay, we received an email requesting international flight details, our passports, our food and beverage requests, any food and beverage preferences, restrictions, or allergies. The staff assured us that they'd take care of all aspects of our intra-Nicaraguan travel and escort us throughout our journey. So that already sounds pretty luxurious in terms of everything is going to be handled. And then he went on to talk about the boat ride itself and say that the boat ride itself was very uneventful. Broken into two parts. First hour is riding through the mangroves on the river to a small village called Pearl Lagoon. The water was like glass the entire hour and was extremely smooth. We were also surprised to see a couple dozen monkeys in the trees. They weren't so excited to see us, so they didn't get any pictures of that. Then they go on to say after an hour, we reached the Pearl Lagoon. We were served breakfast, which was a bottle of water, an apple, a cold tortilla filled with egg, cheese, and ham. Afterwards, Jake took us for a tour of the small village, which we learned is his hometown. While the village of about 300 people is tiny, it serves as a home base for most of Calala Island's staff. After a 30 to 40-minute break, we set off for the final leg to Calala Island. Once we were off from there, quick 5-minute boat ride to the Nicaraguan military checkpoint at the mouth of the river. This naval base helps deter drug smuggling via the river system. This checkpoint took only a few minutes, and we were not questioned at all or asked for our passports. After leaving the naval checkpoint, we reached the sea a few minutes later. It was a very calm day, and the water was very nice. We arrived at Calala Island promptly at 11 a.m., which was our targeted time frame from the phone call with Claudia the night before, and 1 hour after departure from Pearl Lagoon. So Derrick describes it as a pretty easy situation, and a number of readers commented too that have been and said that to them that's part of the adventure, and it certainly does look pretty adventurous, if you take a look at the pictures and things. So I can totally see where that would be that would have some appeal for some folks. And Derrick actually ran into him at an event, and he talked about this with me for a little bit and talked about how much they loved it. They had a great time at Calala Island, and he'd gladly go back, kind of a thing. So I think that there's definitely two schools of thought here. Now, I do want to mention he highlights in there arriving promptly at 11 a.m. when they expected. I want to highlight the fact, though, that I think you have to show up at the airport at like 5:30 in the morning to get this process started. So It is still like 5.5 hours from the time you get to Managua to the time you get to the island. No, I shouldn't even say the time you get to Managua, because you have to overnight in Managua and then get back to the airport at 5:30 in the morning to start this. So it is a bit of an involved process.
Right. It's definitely extremely remote, So even if you're coming from the Americas, like it seems like more difficult to get there than like a island in Southeast Asia, because generally you could get much closer to the island in Southeast Asia with a flight. Anyway, so yeah, I find it fascinating how different those two takes are, and I think it's worth it's worth, like, if you're gonna do it, be familiar with these different takes, because certainly many people, if they just read 1 Mile at a Time, would be like, no way. Whereas, and they might miss out on great experience. The flip side is, if you just read Travel on Points and you have an experience like Ben's, you might be like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So it can go either way. All right. So let's discuss this. Is Calala Island worth it? So given that it's an adventure to get there, whether you like that adventure or not, it's an adventure, right? What about the experience on the island? Is it worth it? And so there are tons of reviews out there for the island, and they range from great to middling to poor, as any property does. I'm gonna read first. Just when we posted about this $2,500 deal, a commenter, Kurt S, wrote on our post, "I just got back from Calala on February 6th." So that's really recent. And in my opinion, this is an insane deal. 6 total units, but each is a standalone house with your own private beach area. Layer in the fact that it's all inclusive for less than $500 per night for 2 people. There is no AC, but there are ocean breezes. They have tiny bugs like mosquitoes, but provide custom-made bug spray that smells great and is easy to reapply. Food was fantastic, and the bar had a decent selection. The trip from MGA to the island and back is an adventure, so if you don't see travel that way, this place wouldn't be a good fit. I thought that was a nice balance thing.
Yeah.
So clearly, uh, Kurt loved the experience, had a great experience, but admits that it's probably not for everyone because of the sort of adventure aspects, right? I also looked at TripAdvisor, and the average TripAdvisor review is 4.7, with the majority of reviews gave 5 stars, and there were just a few 4 stars, a few 3 stars, and one star. I'm going to read parts of a 5 star and parts of a 3 star to give you some balance here. The 5 star one is from Kevin P., who wrote, "We had an amazing holiday experience. From the moment you are met at the airport and transported by flight and boat, the care and attention of the team is first class. The transportation to from the island was part of the adventure and was a wonderful experience. The hospitality and food and drinks that the team provided was memorable, and they all created so many happy memories that will last with us forever. Nothing was ever a problem, and even the bugs were not a major issue as there was repellent provided everywhere you went. The team made themselves available every day to take us out on their boat for fishing trips that were fantastic, and they were great company. We managed to see baby turtles that had hatched, and it was a truly magical experience. And we would recommend this once in a lifetime trip to anyone thinking about it." Okay. The 3 star example comes from Stacy S., who had booked with Hyatt points when SLH used to partner with Hyatt. Stacy S. writes, "The website makes it seem like this is an ultra luxurious 5 star private island resort like the Maldives. It is a beautiful little island in the remote regions of Nicaragua. They do a very good job taking care of the island, but this is more like a 3 star resort at best. The room was equivalent to glamping. If I was someone who paid the cash rate to stay here, I would have been extremely upset with what I received. It's a unique property and has its charm, but also issues. Would I stay here again? Probably not. Did we enjoy our time? Yes. Did I feel like I was sold something else? Yes."
Yeah, so that's I think that's the thing. I think how you're going to feel about that is going to vary quite a bit. I think Stacy's review there is also very fair and balanced. It's interesting because you look at Kurt's review that we mentioned from the blog where he said this is an insane deal, really had a great time, but balancing it out, saying, well, there's no AC and there are bugs. They give you the repellent, blah, blah, blah. So he kind of hits both sides of it there in a positive overall kind of note or a positive tone. And Stacy is sort of on the flip side of that, where it's also pretty balanced. Like, did we enjoy our time? Sure. Would I go again? No, probably not. And did I feel like, I think that last part is really the part that stuck out to me. Did I feel like I was sold something else? And she said yes. And so I think that's probably the most important thing if you're considering Calala Island is to understand what you're getting, because I think it probably is easy for it to seem misrepresented or represented differently than what the experience might actually feel like. And I think if you know what you're getting, then you may love this, and this could be an amazing deal. If you're thinking about it like the luxury Maldives property, then my take on all the reviews I've read is that you'll probably be a little disappointed if that's
Yep.
what you're expecting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Stacy mentioned glamping and as a negative, but a lot of people like having that combination of like sort of not luxury, but the things you're used to having real toilets and things and good food prepared for you, but at the same time being out in nature and enjoying nature. And this sounds to me like more like that than more designed experience as you would get typically in a resort in the Maldives. So I think a lot of people would like that, and obviously a lot of people wouldn't. All right, so now that we know a lot about what to expect here, I want to know, Nick, are you going to take advantage of this deal?
Absolutely not. No, not me. For a few reasons. So, first off, I read 1 Mile at a Time's review of the transfer experience to my wife, and that sealed the deal that we'll never go. 'Cause she had no interest in that, nor would I. To be honest, I don't love boats to begin with, and 2 hours on a rowboat with a motor does not sound like a good time to me at all. And whatever's at the other end of that, I'm not sure that I can imagine the thing at the other end of that would be appealing enough for me to do that. So the whole transfer experience is just, it's too many steps for me to get to a beautiful beach. There's so many beautiful beaches, and I love a beautiful beach as much as anybody that I know. I love beautiful remote tropical beaches. It seems like a little bit more effort than I want to go to for just that. So the transfer experience kind of has me out to begin with. And I don't necessarily love the, no AC and lots of bugs. I mean, all that stuff is sort of comes with the bugs and stuff that comes with being in a tropical environment. You're going to get that anywhere to some extent. No AC. I like to be comfortable when I go to sleep at night, and ocean breeze might do it. It might not, depending on the weather, being uncovered on the boat for a couple hours to get there too. There's too many things, too many little things that put me off on this, and too many other places that I am interested in going. So it's not for me. However, I can completely recognize that it would be for some people. And I think maybe when we were younger, if we had been into miles and points in our 20s and this had popped up, I think maybe we probably had more sense of adventure and would have been more into it. These days, I just don't think that's where we are. So I'm not probably going to do this, but it does look pretty cool. And for the price, there's part of me that wanted to do it just for the sake of doing it and being able to write about it and explain my experience with it, but not enough to actually do it. What about you, Greg? You gonna check this one out for us?
I am not going to, unless something strange happens with my marriage. Similar to you. So last night I discussed this with my wife about like this amazing deal, but then I explained the whole transfer thing, and because she sounded interested at first, but then, once I explained how the transfer works, she's like, no way. Yeah. And to go back a little bit, not everyone may know this, but years ago, I used Virgin Atlantic points, 1.2 million to go to Necker Island with my wife. And that was an amazing experience. And part of getting there was for us, it doesn't have to be, but was for us a tiny 6-seater plane I think it was from Puerto Rico to Beef Island. And I enjoyed that little rickety plane and flying there. And it was only 20 or 30 minutes. My wife hated it. She was like trying to remember if our son knew where the will was and things like that. So
fair.
So, and that was only, half an hour or less, so the idea of subjecting her to that for, not that, but 2 hours of the boat plus however long the plane transfer on the little plane, all of that, just sounds like stuff that, my marriage might not survive that.
Now, in fairness, Greg, I did read in one of the reviews, I don't remember if it was Derrick Dye's or if it was 1 Mile at a Time, but I did read that, so the domestic flight you take from Managua, of course, Nicaragua, you take that domestic flight to, I think it's called Bluefields, and then from there, that's where you take the taxi and then the boat. I did read that it is an option to take a helicopter from Bluefields, so I think it costs $18,000. So you could do that if you would rather. Maybe I think it was 1 Mile at a Time that wrote about that. So maybe the number has gone up because prices have probably risen since 1 Mile at a Time wrote about this. So it's possible it even costs a little more, but that's your alternative. So if you're looking at this and you're like, is there another option? There you go.
Yeah. Hey, once Blade Helicopter takes over that route, we can use our Bilt cash to try to book that, and hopefully not crash on the cash. Okay. So neither of us are going, although I do think that I would enjoy it. I just don't think it's right for my wife. But this whole situation brings to my mind the topic of what 1 Mile at a Time coined, I think, as luxury hotel point farms. This is something that we posted about we have these posts called Saturday Selections, where we post a collection of things from around the web, and we had a post with discussion about this idea of luxury hotel point farms. This is where hotels that lean on loyalty program participation to fill their hotels, basically, rather than winning guests by the merit of the product that they provide. So I'm wondering, this whole thing makes me think, That's what's going on here. And it's really tied into with the economics of how the Hilton partnership with SLH works and how these things typically work is that typically when people book a hotel with points, the hotel will get paid for that room based on their occupancy rate at that time. So if they're full or close to full, let's say 90%, I don't know the exact numbers, they might get what the rack rate is for that room from the loyalty program or close to that rack rate, let's say 10% off, whatever. But if they're only like 50% full, they'll get a very small percentage of that, right? So what's happening, I believe, you have these small properties, like in this case, only 6 villas, where filling it up so that it's always at 90% occupancy is fairly easy to do if you make it very attractive to people who have points. And so I think that what's going on here is that Calala Island was smart enough to recognize this situation and say, well, I think a couple of things happened. One, I think that their cash rates got inflated over the years because of this whole thing. Like they're not trying to attract paid guests; they're trying to attract loyalty program guests primarily, right?
Right.
And so, even getting 50% of the rack rate of $4,500 or more is pretty good when you consider that I remember when they were with Hyatt, I think my memory tells me the rates were more around 2,200, maybe 2,400 a night. So they've doubled the rates over now. Yes, there's inflation, but that's a lot. And I think what they're doing is basically trying to be attractive to Hilton participants so that Hilton people will book it and that they'll fill up. That doesn't mean it's a bad hotel. It just means that
Right.
someone looked at it and said, "Wow, we could be like nearly 100% full all the time if we make ourselves very attractive to people with points." And I think that this promotion is probably, if not originally conceived of for this reason, it certainly does that. And I think that they'll find that it's a genius move because they're gonna fill up their little island for most of the year probably and get close to full rack rate for that whole time, which is just insane. So, what do you think? Do you think that's what's going on here?
I mean, it's got to be, right? It seems like really smart business. So if their rate is $4,000 a night to keep the numbers simple and they're getting 75% back from Hilton when they're pretty close to free, that's $3,000 a night. So if they get you to book a 4 night stay, just 4 nights, they're getting $12,000. So if
Yeah,
they rebate you $2,500, they're
and 10.
still getting, what's that?
So don't forget the
2510,
$10.
2510, 2510. If they rebate you 2510, they're still getting, more than $9,000, $9,500 for $9,490 if you want to be really specific, Greg. And then that's pretty good for 4 nights in Nicaragua, probably. Like that
Yeah,
probably covers their cost and then some. Seems like smart business to me. Now they used to have 4 villas, they've expanded to 6. Part of me wonders where the cutoff is for occupancy for Hilton, and if that was an intentional move. So, like, with just 5 out of 6 villas, that's like 83% occupancy. Is that like where they need to be for their reimbursement? I don't know. I'd be interested to see or to look at some of
yeah,
the luxury properties and see what the kind of minimum number of rooms seems to be, because I wouldn't be shocked if that has
right.
something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, that seems to me like it's got to be what's happening. And brilliant, whatever business person came up with this, like that was a great idea. Whoever recognized that possibility, and particularly with the move to Hilton. Now, I can't imagine that that was all like pre-planned and thought out, but for SLH, this has to work out really well because Hilton sells their points so cheaply. Like when they were partnered with Hyatt, okay, the same kind of thing could work, but Hyatt points are harder to accumulate. And so probably not quite as easy to get as many people with lots of points, but Hilton points are so easy to accumulate that, as we mentioned on this show, wrote in our post, and probably I didn't read everybody else's post, but probably any other Miles and Points blogger that wrote about this probably pointed out the fact that you could buy the points really cheaply from Hilton. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like that's got to be what's going on here.
It
Yeah,
does. And even if it's not, I mean, it would be kind of
right.
crazy for other small luxury properties
Not to
not
copy
to
it.
do something
Yeah.
like this themselves. A property could if they charge a big enough cash rate and they get a big enough percentage of it, they could pay you exactly what it costs you for the points
Yeah.
to book a stay with them and still come out way ahead.
Right.
It's possible.
Right.
Now, if that happens with a lot of properties, that's not going to be sustainable
Right.
for Hilton, right? I mean, it's already
Right.
probably not sustainable,
Right.
and that's why we've seen this spiraling inflation in the top level of Hilton point costs. Like so, before all this started, the top most expensive property cost 150,000 Hilton points. They acquired SL or they didn't. They partnered with SLH, and then soon after it went up to 200,000, and then soon after that it went up to 250,000, the most. It seems to me that as this starts happening more, which seems inevitable to me, they're going to have to raise that cap more and more,
Yeah.
and maybe cap free night certificates, which would be a real shame.
It would be a real shame. So I hope that doesn't happen. At the same time, worth keeping an eye out for things like this because I never would have anticipated this type of promotion, but it probably, as we've said, makes a lot of economic sense. And like Greg said, if there's no other SLH owner out there paying attention to this, I'd be shocked. So, it does seem like something that maybe we would see again. Now, I can't imagine that Hilton's going to love that. So I don't know how that'll all get worked out, but I have to assume that the reimbursement rates and things are probably negotiated and contracted. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what would happen that would change us apart from raising the award rates, like Greg said. So jump on a deal like this when you see it if you're interested, because I can't imagine it's going to last for years like this.
Yeah, yeah. One interesting thing I found when reading some of the TripAdvisor reviews of the island is that they seem to have another trick for filling up their island,
Mm,
if these reviews are to be believed, which is that it seems that in the UK at least they run auctions and auction off rooms, and so I think that's a similar thing. Like one person claimed that it didn't matter whether you were the winning bid or not, you'd still get a room. Like, so basically, as long as your bid was high enough, that they'd be like, "Hey, you won the auction," and so that could be another way to increase occupancy by making it look like you're getting this $4,500 per night room when the real value is something considerably less than that. That's not to say it's not worth $1,000, $2,000 a night. I don't know how to really judge that,
right, right.
but I do definitely think 4,500, which is the lowest price I saw. It's often more like 6,000 a night. That's a way inflated price based on and it's designed to encourage people to bid up these auctions and to use points to book
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And to be clear, like this is not a new concept necessarily. When you think about some of the popular points and miles properties out there in chains, your whatever, your Park Hyatts and Andazes and things like that. Oftentimes they have public rates that are pretty high, but if you have a corporate rate of some sort, if you work for a particular company, oftentimes the rates that you'll have access to are significantly less. It's sort of a similar type of a thing, right? Where they're willing to sell the room for significantly less money, but it probably doesn't hurt them to have higher looking rates. So it seems like a great discount for those folks. And also it seems like a great deal for people using points, even though perhaps in some cases, a lot of their rooms are sold at corporate rates. I imagine that there are some places that are very much in that type of a situation too. So it's probably not a new concept, but it's very glaringly obvious, I think, in
Yeah.
this particular situation.
Yeah, yeah. The disappointing thing, and I'm not at all suggesting that's happening here, is when the disappointing thing is when hotels rely so much on these loyalty programs or other methods of filling up their hotel that they decide that they don't need to compete for
Yeah.
business and stop having great service or food or whatever it is that
Hmm.
might decline because hey, we're filling up anyway because we're a popular Marriott property or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So
Right.
there's definitely those type of properties out there, and that's a shame. And that was the point of the post from One Mile at a Time that I mentioned that was about luxury hotel point farms that
Hmm.
some of them were really just not not good hotels because they filled up too easily, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. I think that brings us to this week's question of the week. That wraps up the main event, brings us to the question of the week. So this week's question of the week is a travel related question, but a little bit different than what we've been talking about here. So Carl writes in and says, or asks about travel insurance and says, I use my Ritz card to book most flights due to the touted protections. I've never needed them yet. However, I'd be curious to know the specifics of what I should do if my trip or baggage is delayed or baggage is lost. What do I need in order, or what do I need to do on the front end to prepare for these contingencies? Do I need to document/photograph my luggage prior to the trip in case I need reimbursement later? What sort of documentation do I need from the airline in these situations, and how do I get it? Any specifics you can provide are appreciated. Also, can you remind us of how much the trip charges need to be on the Ritz card in order to collect travel benefits for both cash and award tickets? So, what do you need to think about, or what have you thought about? What would you think about? What would you do, even if you don't know what to think about, if you were wondering how all of that works, like, or to prepare for that type of situation? I guess first, do you prepare for it? Do you do anything proactive? And then second, what would you do if you ran into one of those situations?
Yeah. No, I don't really do anything to prepare for it, to be honest. And I probably should in some ways, but the one thing, the question about like how much needs to be put on the card, it actually varies for what kind of protection you're talking about. So some coverage, almost all coverage is activated if you put any amount of the travel on your card, but some of the payouts are limited by how much you paid on the card. So it depends what kind of coverage you're looking at as to whether it's limited to the amount you put on the card. So, for example, if you had, I don't know, like $400 of flight credits and you paid $10 on your Ritz card for your flight, are you covered for some things you're fully covered, and for some things you'd only be covered up to $10. And I don't
Yeah,
remember
so
off the
well,
top of my head which ones are
yeah,
which.
to give an example, like trip delay protection would be fully covered. If your trip gets delayed by 6 hours or more or overnight, then you'd be covered for reasonable expenses up to like $500 a person, for instance, just by putting that $10 on the card. Trip cancellation, on the other hand, if you canceled your trip because somebody got sick or whatever
Great
else,
example.
you'd only be covered for the $10 you put on the Ritz card. So baggage delay, that's going to be covered in full, or lost baggage, that'll be covered in full by putting part of the trip on your card. So that's what Greg means when he says it varies. It depends on which type of problem you end up running into or needing to fix.
Yeah, yeah. So what about you? What do you do to prepare, or what should people do, even if you
Well,
do it?
so not regularly, but and I don't tend to worry about this for flights. Knock on wood, we fly a fair amount, right? And we always check a bag when we're traveling as a family. And in all of our travels, in all of the time that we've been around, I think we've only ever had one bag get lost. And it was the time where we forgot we had sunscreen in our bag. So we checked a drawstring bag with sunscreen coming from Honduras back to the United States. Didn't shock me that it got lost somewhere. So,
Yeah.
so that was, that's the only time we've had a bag get lost. Again, knock on wood, because we do always check stuff. But we have had some things delayed here and there from time to time. Usually not a big deal when it has happened. However, when we take a cruise, typically with a cruise, the night before you get off of the cruise, you leave your bags outside of your room and they just pick them up and then bring them in to wherever when you pick them up when you get off the ship. And so I actually do usually take a picture of the bags when I put them outside of the room, mostly so that if they get lost, I can show somebody what they look like, because I
Hmm.
feel like in that
That's
situation,
smart.
there's a non-zero chance they get lost. In fact, just the last cruise we took, the first person we asked where our zone was for our bag, they told us, and turned out that wasn't the right zone. Eventually, we found our bags somewhere else, but it wasn't where they were supposed to be. So having a picture in that case helps. I don't take a picture before we check bags every flight. I don't tend to worry about that for the most part, but I guess it would be good practice to have a picture of your checked bags in general, again, so that you can provide it to say, hey, this is what it looks like, so they can find it if it gets lost. But that's not so much for the insurance part of it. Now, in terms of baggage insurance for the stuff that's inside your bag, I don't know. I haven't ever had to make a claim for that. I'm not sure what documentation they're going to require. In terms of trip cancellation coverage, this is fresh in mind because today, as we record this, my son spent the entire previous night vomiting all night long, and we're scheduled to fly tomorrow. So, and of course, this is the one time a year where I booked a low cost carrier. And so, completely non-refundable, non-cancelable, changeable at this point, but booked on our Ritz card specifically for this protection and to be able to use the airline incidental credit since it was a low-cost carrier. So I just got looking into that, and it looks like I'm going to need some documentation from a physician, and they exclude like a massage therapist or I don't know, a couple other things like that. So they're a little specific, but not particularly specific in terms of the documentation. And I will update when I know whether or not my claim goes through and what type of documentation I provided once I have all of that sorted out, because we're working on collecting all of
There
that
you go.
today. So fresh in mind. So look out for that sometime. I don't even want to say soon, Carl, because I think that sometimes these claims drag on for a while. So it might be a month or two until I know whether it gets approved and or denied. But I am going to be working on the trip cancellation coverage in particular because I am going to be canceling tomorrow's flight. So that's that. In terms of delay, I always take a picture of if I'm in that situation. I say always, is a bit rare that I end up in that situation either. But I take a screenshot of like flight aware or flight stats showing the delay and the time that it arrived so that I have a record of what time that flight arrived. Now you could go back and find that a year later too. So you don't necessarily have to do it in real time, but I usually do take a screenshot if it's significantly delayed, to have that for my records in case I need it. In terms of trip delay coverage, I did once have to file trip delay coverage with Citi, and the process was relatively simple. I've done other purchase protections as well a couple of times. A phone I broke, I wrote about at some point, actually a couple of them I think that I broke with different types of coverages. It's all done by a separate claims administrator, so your experience with all of these things could vary depending on the adjuster that you get. So try to get as much documentation of whatever it is as you can. That's going to be the general advice. But again, look out for my post on trip cancellation sometime and listen to the show, and we'll probably mention it whenever it gets published.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that too, or hearing about it on a future show.
Right. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting reimbursed. All right. So,
Yes.
anyway, that brings us to the end of today's episode. If you've enjoyed this and you like to get more of this stuff in your email inbox each day or each week, you want to go to frequentmiler.com/subscribe. Again, that's frequentmiler.com/subscribe to join our email list, follow us on all the various social media, join our Frequent Miler Insiders Facebook group where you can ask and answer questions like that one all the time. That, by the way, is a great resource for this type of thing. If I was live in the moment with a trip cancellation type of a situation or delay and I had questions, I'd go to Frequent Miler Insiders because I almost guarantee there are people there who have dealt with that who would be able
Good
to answer
point.
it.
Yes.
Anyway, wherever you're watching or listening, don't forget to like, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. And if you have a question that you'd like to be considered for a future question of the week or a piece of feedback for our giant mailbag, you can send that too.
Send it to mailbag@frequentmiler.com. Bye, everybody.